In the fading light of a crisp autumn evening in 1983, Millfield, Ohio hummed with the quiet resignation of a Rust Belt town battered by factory closures and economic strain. The steel mills that once powered this corner of America were shuttering, leaving families scrambling to survive in Ronald Reagan's era of trickle-down promises and big dreams. I, Emma Wilson, stood at the heart of this world, a doctor at Millfield General Hospital, my white coat a badge of pride earned through years of grit, and my late father's belief in me. My story, though, isn't just about medicine. It's about a marriage that broke me, a betrayal that killed me, and a second chance that set me free. If my journey resonates with you, hit that like button. Leave a comment to share your thoughts and subscribe to my channel for more stories of triumph over heartbreak. It's like joining a community of souls, rebuilding their lives just like me. My father, Robert Wilson, had been a steel baron, one of the last to keep his mill running before the recession hit hard. His wealth and connections were a lifeline for many, including David Carter, the man I married. David, a tall, broad-shouldered army officer with a disarming smile, wasn't driven by love when he proposed. He needed my father's financial backing to climb the military ranks, a fact I didn't fully grasp in my naive 20s. In 1983, America was all about appearances, big hair shoulder pads, and the self-made man myth. David played that role well, charming everyone with his tales of battlefield bravery, but I believed my devotion could turn gratitude into something tangible. I was wrong. David's heart belonged to Lisa Evans, his first love, a woman whose delicate frame and soft voice masked a cunning ability to get what she wanted. Lisa was no stranger to Millfield's gossip circles. A night school nursing dropout, she spent her days window shopping at the new mall and her evenings dragging David to dance clubs or drive-in theaters. She'd bat her lashes, play the damsel, and David would drop everything to fulfill her whims. Once she lingered by a jewelry store window, sighing over a sapphire necklace. By the next day, it was hers, paid for with my inheritance money my father left to secure my future, not hers. Our marriage was a facade built on my family's wealth and my blind hope. In the early 80s, women like me, doctors no less, were rare, and society still expected us to prioritize husbands over careers. I poured my heart into supporting David, managing our household on his meager military stipend while he funneled my dowry to Lisa. He bought her dresses, perfume, even a used Mustang, all while I mended my own clothes to save pennies. My father's death in a heart attack, just months before, left me vulnerable, and David's true colors emerged. Gone was the charming officer who'd courted me in front of my family. In his place was a cold, ungrateful man who saw my sacrifices as his due. Lisa's presence was a constant thorn. She'd show up at our apartment claiming she needed David's help with trivial tasks, a leaky faucet, a flat tire. Her frail act, so different from my bold, decisive nature, fed David's ego. He'd call it looking out for a friend, but the late-night calls and whispered conversations told another story. My voice shaking with hurt when I confronted him, he'd sneer, "You're too intense, Emma. Lisa's not like you, she needs me." The words cut deep, each one a reminder that my love was a currency he spent elsewhere. The town of Millfield, with its diners and picket fences, buzzed with Reagan-era optimism, but our home was a battleground. I'd cook David's favorite meatloaf, avoiding the spicy flavors I loved because his mother Mary called them unladylike. I'd stay up late balancing our budget, dipping into my savings to cover his debts, only to find receipts for Lisa's gifts in his pockets. My friends like Sarah Thompson, a nurse at the hospital, urged me to leave, but love blinded me. I thought if I tried harder, he'd see me. Instead, he saw Lisa's tears, gentle pleas, and calculated fragility. One night, I found David's journal, a relic from his army training days. In it, he wrote of Lisa as his white moonlight, the woman he'd marry if life hadn't forced him to settle for me. The words shattered something inside me, but I clung to hope, believing my father's legacy tied us together. My parents, Robert and Ellen, raised me to be strong and fight for what mattered. They'd scrimped to send me to medical school, defying the era's norms that pegged women for homemaking. Yet here I was, diminishing myself for a man who didn't care. The hospital was my sanctuary, where I thrived as doctor. Wilson saving lives in a world that doubted women could. But even there, David's shadow loomed. He'd call during my shifts, demanding I cover his expenses or accusing me of neglecting him. Lisa, meanwhile, hovered like a specter, her name whispered by colleagues who'd seen her with David at the town's new roller rink. The pain of their affair was a slow poison eroding my confidence. I'd look in the mirror, my once vibrant eyes dulled, and wonder where Emma Wilson had gone. As I share this, I think of all the women who've felt invisible in their own lives. If my story strikes a chord, click that like button, drop a comment about your own journey, and subscribe to join others who found strength in starting over. My past life taught me one thing: love shouldn't cost you your soul. But it wasn't until death and a miracle gave me a second chance that I truly understood what I'd lost. The betrayal that defined my past life peaked in the winter of 1983 when Millfield was blanketed in snow and the town's Christmas lights flickered against the economic gloom. I was 8 months pregnant, carrying the child I hoped would bind David and me closer. That hope was a delusion. One stormy night, as I hurried to bring in groceries, I slipped on our icy porch, the bags tumbling as pain seared. The fall left me bleeding, barely conscious, my baby, and I in critical condition. At Millfield General, my colleagues fought to save us, but David was nowhere to be found. The nurses dialed his number repeatedly, only to hear it ring unanswered. Deep down, I knew why. It was Lisa Evans's birthday, and David was at her party toasting her while I fought for life. Alone in the operating room, my hands trembling, I signed the surgical consent form. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the cold of the table seeped into my bones. As the anesthesia took hold, a wave of regret crashed over me. I'd given everything: my money, my career, my heart, to a man who didn't care if I lived or died. My parents' faces flashed in my mind, their pride in my medical degree, now a distant memory. As my vision faded, a warmth enveloped me, and a soft yet resolute voice whispered, "Your strength has earned you redemption." Watching from beyond it was as if my parents had pleaded with fate to grant me another chance. In that final moment, I swore never to let David Carter near me again. I awoke with a start, my heart pounding, the hospital's antiseptic smell grounding me. It was 1983 again, the day my father died, his heart attack stealing him just as the steel industry crumbled. I was reborn, inexplicably returned to the moment David's betrayal began to unravel me. The hospital's clunky typewriters and rotary phones, the nurses' teased hairstyles, and the Reagan posters on the walls anchored me in this second chance. With its shuttered factories and diner jukeboxes playing Springsteen, Millfield was a town of resilience and despair mirroring my heart. David stormed into my office, his army uniform crisp, his voice sharp with entitlement. "Emma, give your doctor's position to Lisa. I'll find you a job at the VA later." In my past life, I'd been a fool blinded by love. I'd handed over my career, earned through sleepless nights in medical school, to Lisa, a woman who couldn't even pass basic nursing exams. I'd become a servant to David's family, cooking bland casseroles for his mother Mary, and stretching his $800 a month stipend while he lavished my inheritance on Lisa. My father's connections had secured David's promotions, yet he and his family credited only his talent. I'd believed his lies, thinking my sacrifices would earn his love. The divine warmth that brought me back burned away my naivety this time. I saw David for what he was: a man who exploited my family's wealth while worshiping Lisa's fragility. Lisa, with her soft curls and calculated tears, was no doctor. She'd flunked out of night school, more interested in mall shopping and disco nights than patient care, yet David, driven by his need to feel superior, insisted she could replace me. "Lisa deserves a chance," he'd say, as if my years of training meant nothing. I stood at my desk, patient charts stacked neatly, the weight of my stethoscope grounding me. "No, David," I said, my voice steady. "My job's mine. Lisa's not qualified." His face flushed, unused to my defiance. In my past life, I'd have caved, terrified of losing him. Now I saw the truth: Lisa's delicacy was a performance, a way to manipulate David's insecurities. She'd linger at our apartment, asking him to fix her car or comfort her during storms, her eyes gleaming with expectation. David, oblivious, called it kindness, but Millfield's gossip whispered at the diner or the bowling alley knew better. My refusal sparked a fire. David's eyes narrowed, but I held my ground. The hospital's bustle, a reminder of my purpose. My parents had fought for my education in an era when women were expected to be wives, not doctors. My mother, Ellen, a schoolteacher, had tutored me through chemistry while my father sold his car to pay my tuition. Their legacy was this white coat, not David's ambition. As he stormed out, Lisa trailed behind with her usual tearful act, and I felt a shift. The hospital staff, overhearing our clash, nodded in quiet support. For all its struggles, Millfield valued hard work, and I was one of their own. That night, alone in my office, I traced the scars of my past life, not physical, but etched in my soul. The divine voice that saved me lingered, a reminder that my strength, not my suffering, had earned this rebirth. I thought of Auntie June, my mother's best friend, a nurse who'd battled sexism to rise in the 60s. She and her husband, Colonel Tom Reynolds, David's superior, had always treated me like family. Their support, I knew, would be my anchor. As I locked my office, the neon glow of a nearby bar flickered, playing Madonna's Holiday. This was 1983, a time of change, and I was ready to rewrite my story free from David's shadow. Winter's grip tightened on Millfield, Ohio in 1983, the snow piling high outside our modest clapboard house, a government-issued perk of David Carter's Army career. The town, battered by the recession, clung to the flickering warmth of Christmas lights across Main Street, where diners and hardware stores struggled to stay open. I was 8 months pregnant, my belly heavy with the child I hoped would mend the widening cracks in my marriage to David. At 30, I was Dr. Emma Wilson, a rare female physician in an era when women were still expected to prioritize family over ambition. My white coat, earned through grueling years at Case Western's medical school, was my pride, but at home, I was just David's wife, diminished by his obsession with Lisa Evans. That fateful night, a blizzard howled, rattling the windows as I hauled grocery bags from our rusted Buick. The porch, slick with ice, betrayed me. My foot slipped and I fell hard, the bag spilling apples and canned soup across the snow. Pain seared through my abdomen, sharp and relentless as blood pooled beneath me. I crawled to the phone, dialing Millfield General Hospital, my voice a desperate whisper. The ambulance arrived, its siren cutting through the storm, and I was rushed to the emergency room where my colleagues' faces were grim under the fluorescent lights. They tried calling David his office pager and even the local bar where he sometimes drank, but there was no answer. I knew why. It was Lisa's birthday, and David was at her party, likely swaying to Billy Joel's Uptown Girl at the roller rink, oblivious to my crisis. The cold steel table chilled my skin in the operating room as monitors beeped erratically. My baby and I were slipping away, the doctor's urgent voices fading. I signed the surgical consent form alone, my hand shaking, ink smudging with tears. My mind replayed the past year, David's late nights with Lisa, his dismissal of my sacrifices, the way he'd spent my father's steel fortune on her, while I patched our budget with my dowry. My parents, Robert and Ellen, had believed in me, selling their car to fund my education in a time when women doctors were anomalies. Now, as life drained from me, regret burned hotter than the pain. I'd given everything, my wealth, my heart, my dignity, to a man who chose another woman over his dying wife and child. As my vision darkened, a warmth enveloped me, not from the hospital, but from something beyond. A gentle yet firm voice whispered through the haze, "Your heart's resilience has earned you redemption." Watching from some celestial plane, it was as if my parents had pleaded with fate. Their love and sacrifices had anchored me to this world, and now a divine force, perhaps their will woven into the universe, granted me a second chance. My final thought was a vow: if I could live again, I'd stay far from David Carter, protect my career, and honor my parents' legacy. The monitors flatlined and darkness claimed me, but it wasn't the end. In that liminal space between life and death, I saw flashes. My mother's smile as she tutored me through chemistry, my father's proud tears at my graduation. The voice spoke again. "Your strength is your salvation." It wasn't just pity, but a cosmic acknowledgement of my endurance, a gift born from my unyielding spirit. I clung to it, my resolve hardening. When I opened my eyes, the world had shifted. I was back in Millfield General, the same hospital, but the date was earlier, September 1983, the day my father died of a heart attack. The clatter of typewriters, the scent of antiseptic, and the nurses' teased hairdos grounded me in this reborn reality. Reagan's face grinned from a poster promising prosperity, while Springsteen's Born in the USA played faintly from a radio. I was alive, my body unscarred, my pregnancy undone. The divine intervention that brought me back wasn't random. It was a testament to my inner fire, forged through years of battling David's neglect and society's expectations. My parents' love had woven a thread through time, pulling me back to rewrite my story. I stood at my desk, patient charts stacked neatly, my stethoscope a familiar weight around my neck. The hospital was my domain, where I saved lives, not where I'd lose mine. But the past lingered, a scar on my soul, urging me to act differently this time. David's voice broke my reverie, sharp and demanding as he stormed into my office. "Emma, give your doctor's position to Lisa. I'll find you something at the VA later." In my past life, I'd crumbled handing over my job to Lisa, a woman who'd flunked nursing school and spent her days browsing Millfield's new mall. I'd become a servant to David's family, cooking bland pot roasts for his mother, Mary, while he funneled my inheritance to Lisa's whims, a fur coat, a diner, jukeboxes worth of quarters for her nights out. My father's connections had secured David's captaincy, yet he and Mary credited only his brilliance. I'd believed his lies, thinking my love would change him. Now reborn, I saw through the facade. Lisa's delicate act, her soft voice, her calculated tears, was a trap for David's ego, exploiting his need to feel like a hero. She wasn't a doctor, barely a nurse yet. David insisted she could replace me. No, I said, my voice steady, cutting through the office's hum. My job's mine. Lisa's not qualified. His jaw tightened, his army posture stiffening, but I held his gaze. The hospital's bustle nurses calling for charts, patients coughing in the waiting room, reminded me of my purpose. I was Dr. Emma Wilson, not David's pawn. This time I'd fight for myself. The fluorescent lights of Millfield General Hospital buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows on the linoleum floor. It was September 1983, the day my father, Robert Wilson, died of a heart attack, leaving a void in Millfield's steel community and in my heart. I stood in my office, reborn, my hands steady on a patient chart, the weight of my second chance settling like the autumn leaves outside. The divine voice that had pulled me back from death echoed in my mind. Your strength is your salvation. It wasn't just a miracle. It was a mandate, a gift woven from my parents' love and my own resilience, demanding I rewrite my fate in this Rust Belt town where survival meant defiance. Millfield, Ohio was a microcosm of 1983 America, gritty, hopeful, and bruised. Factory layoffs had gutted the town, leaving families to scrape by on diner tips or military stipends. Reagan's promises of economic revival blared from TVs, but the shuttered steel mills told a different story. Women like me, doctors in a man's world, were rare. Our ambition met with raised eyebrows or outright scorn. My parents had defied those norms, selling their car to fund my medical school, believing I could be more than a wife. Now reborn, I carried their legacy, determined to honor it. David Carter's intrusion shattered the quiet. Emma, give your position to Lisa, he barked, his army boots scuffing the floor. I'll get you a job at the VA. His voice, laced with entitlement, was a ghost from my past life where I'd surrendered my career to Lisa Evans, a woman whose only skill was manipulating David's insecurities. In that life, I'd become a shadow, cooking for his mother Mary and stretching his $800 stipend while he bought Lisa dresses and concert tickets with my dowry. My father's connections had paved David's path to captain, yet he and Mary dismissed my role, calling his success natural talent. I'd been blind, thinking love meant sacrifice. This time, the divine spark that revived me burned away my naivety. Lisa was no doctor. Her night school nursing attempts were a farce abandoned for mall trips and disco nights. David's insistence that she could replace me was absurd, rooted in his need to play her savior. No, I said, my voice slicing through the tension. My job's earned, David. Lisa can't even handle basic nursing. His face reddened, unused to resistance. I'd have apologized in my past life, terrified of his anger. I saw him clearly, a man who exploited my family's wealth while worshipping Lisa's fragility. The waiting room buzzed beyond my office door, patients whispering about the town's latest drama. My words carried and nurses exchanged knowing glances. Millfield valued hard work, and I was their doctor, not David's doormat. He stormed out, and Lisa trailed with her usual tearful act, but their retreat felt like victory. I sank into my chair, and the stethoscope around my neck reminded me of my purpose. My parents' faces flashed in my mind, my mother's gentle encouragement, my father's pride at my graduation. Their love had anchored this rebirth, a cosmic plea to see me thrive. That evening, I walked to Millie's diner, the neon sign glowing against the dusk. The jukebox played Cyndi Lauper's Girls Want to Have Fun, a fitting anthem for my new resolve. I ordered a cheeseburger with extra pickles, savoring the flavors David's family shunned as too bold. In my past life, I'd cooked bland meals to please Mary, hiding my love for spice. Now each bite was a reclaiming of myself. As I ate, Sarah Thompson, my nurse friend, slid into the booth, her eyes warm with concern. You okay, Emma? I heard about David. Her support, like that of Auntie June and Uncle Tom Reynolds, my parents' friends, was a lifeline. Sarah shared her stories, raising two kids alone after her husband left balancing night shifts in an era when women were expected to stay home. Her strength mirrored mine, a reminder that Millfield's women were fighters. I confided in her about my rebirth, the divine voice, and vow to break free. She didn't question the miracle, only squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than he knows," she said. Like the hospital's bustle, her words grounded me in this second chance. As I left the diner, the town's lights flickered, a symbol of Millfield's resilience. I thought of June and Tom, who'd treated me like a daughter since my parents' deaths. June, a former nurse who'd battled sexism in the 60s, and Tom, a colonel who'd mentored my father, would back me against David. The divine force that reborn me wasn't just a gift. It was a call to honor my parents' legacy, to be the doctor Millfield needed. David's shadow loomed, but I was ready to step into the light, my white coat, my armor, my resolve unbreakable. The September air in Millfield, Ohio, carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves mingling with the faint tang of steel from the shuttered mills down the road. It was 1983, and the town pulsed with the stubborn heartbeat of a community clinging to hope amid Reagan's economic promises and factory layoffs. Millfield General Hospital's brick facade, weathered but proud, was my sanctuary, where I, Dr. Emma Wilson, wielded my stethoscope like a sword. Reborn by a divine force, my parents' love woven into the fabric of fate. I stood at my office desk, patient charts stacked neatly, the weight of my second chance grounding me. The voice that had saved me from death's grip echoed, "Your strength is your salvation." It was a mandate to rewrite my life, to break free from David Carter's betrayal. David stormed into my office, his army captain's uniform, crisp eyes blazing with entitlement. "Emma, give your doctor's position to Lisa Evans," he demanded. His voice cutting through the hum of the hospital's rotary phones and clacking typewriters. "I'll get you a job at the VA later. In my past life, I'd been a fool, blinded by love for a man who saw me as a means to an end. I'd surrendered my hard-earned job to Lisa, a night school dropout who preferred mall shopping to patient care. I'd become a servant to David's family, cooking bland pot roasts for his mother, Mary. At the same time, he spent my inheritance, my father's steel fortune, on Lisa's whims, a leather jacket, concert tickets, a diner's worth of milkshakes. My father's connections had secured David's promotions, yet he and Mary credited only his charisma. I'd believed his lies, thinking my sacrifices would earn his heart. This time, the divine spark that revived me burned away my naivety. Lisa was no doctor. Her nursing attempts were a sham, abandoned for disco nights and feigned fragility. David's insistence that she could replace me was rooted in his need to play her hero, a delusion fed by his insecurities in a town where men still expected women to defer. "No," I said, my voice steady as I met his gaze. "My job's mine, David. I earned it. Lisa can't even handle basic nursing." His jaw tightened, his fists clenching, unused to defiance. In my past life, I'd have crumbled, terrified of his anger, but now I saw him clearly, a man who exploited my family's wealth while worshipping Lisa's calculated tears. The waiting room buzzed beyond my door, patients coughing and nurses calling for charts. My words carried spilling into the corridor, where Millfield's working-class spirit, forged in steel and sweat, valued merit over manipulation. A nurse. Betty glanced up from her clipboard, her nod a silent endorsement. David's face flushed, his authority challenged in this small-town hospital, where gossip spread faster than the flu. Lisa hovered behind him, her soft curls framing a face poised for tears, but I wasn't swayed. "If Lisa wants a job, let her earn it," I said, my tone icy. "This hospital needs doctors, not pretenders." The patients' whispers grew, their eyes on David and Lisa, who shrank under the scrutiny. For all its economic woes, Millfield respected hard work, and I was their doctor, not David's pawn. David stormed out, and Lisa trailed with her usual act, teary eyes and a trembling lip, but their retreat was my victory. I sank into my chair, and the stethoscope around my neck reminded me of my purpose. My parents, Robert and Ellen, had defied the 1960s norms by sending me to medical school and selling their car to pay my tuition. My mother, a school teacher, had tutored me through chemistry, while my father, a steel baron, beamed at my graduation. Their legacy was this white coat, not David's ambition. The divine voice that reborn me wasn't just a miracle, it was their love, a cosmic plea to see me thrive. I traced the edge of a patient chart, my resolve hardening. I'd never again sacrifice my career for a man who didn't care. That evening, I walked to my apartment, the government-issued unit David's military status afforded us. The streets of Millfield glowed with neon signs from diners and bars where locals drowned their layoffs in cheap beer and Springsteen's anthems. I passed Millie's diner, its jukebox playing Madonna's Lucky Star, a fitting nod to my second chance. Inside our apartment, I saw the remnants of my past life furniture I'd bought with my dowry, David's suits I'd paid for, even his watch a gift from my savings. In my past life, I'd stayed cooking for Mary, stretching David's $800 stipend while he bought Lisa gifts. Now I vowed to reclaim it all. I called Sarah Thompson, my nurse friend who'd seen me through late-night shifts and David's betrayals. Over coffee, I shared my rebirth, the divine voice, and plan to leave David. Sarah, a single mother who'd raised 2 kids on a nurse's salary, understood sacrifice. "You're stronger than he knows," she said, her eyes warm, like that of Auntie June and Uncle Tom Reynolds. Her support, my parents' friends, and David's superiors bolstered me. June, a former nurse who'd fought sexism in the 60s, and Tom, a stern but fair-hearted colonel, had always treated me like family. Their backing would be my anchor as I broke free from David's shadow, ready to fight for the life I deserved. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed as I stood my ground in Millfield General's corridor, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and the chatter of patients. It was September 1983, and Millfield, Ohio was a town of resilience, its people weathered by factory closures but unbowed. Reborn by a divine force, my parents' love and my own strength woven into fate's tapestry, I faced David Carter and Lisa Evans, their presence a reminder of my past life's pain. The voice that had saved me from death whispered, "Your strength is your salvation." It was a call to unmask their lies and reclaim my identity as Dr. Emma Wilson. David's demand still echoed, "Give my doctor's position to Lisa." In my past life, I'd complied, handing over my career to a woman who'd flunked nursing school, her days spent browsing Millfield's new mall, her nights dragging David to dance clubs. I'd become a servant to his family, cooking bland meals for his mother Mary, while he spent my inheritance on Lisa's whims, a necklace, a diner's worth of milkshakes. My father's connections had secured David's captaincy, yet he and Mary dismissed my role, crediting his talent. Now reborn, I saw through their facade, my resolve steeled by the divine spark that brought me back. The corridor was a stage, patients and nurses watching as I spoke, my voice carrying over the clatter of typewriters. "Lisa's not qualified," I said, my tone sharp. "Her husband didn't die a hero, he drowned drunk. You want my job for her? Tell the director why a night school dropout should replace a doctor." The words spilled out raw and unfiltered, exposing their affair and Lisa's incompetence. Patients gasped, their whispers spreading like wildfire in Millfield's tight-knit community. Betty, the nurse, nodded, her eyes fierce with support. My stand resonated in 1983 when women fought for respect in men-dominated workplaces. Lisa's face was crumpled and her tears were a practiced act, but the crowd wasn't fooled. David's jaw clenched, his authority crumbling under the scrutiny of Millfield's working-class spirit forged in steel and sweat. He hissed, "You're making a scene," but I stepped closer undeterred. "If you want to report me," I said, "the director's office is down the hall," pointing past the waiting room. "Don't waste these patients' time." The crowd murmured agreement, some recognizing me as their trusted doctor. David and Lisa retreated, her sobs echoing his face, dark and fury. It was a public humiliation, a turning point in my rebirth. I sank into my chair in my office, and the stethoscope around my neck was a lifeline. My parents' faces flashed in my mind, my mother's gentle smile, my father's pride at my graduation. They'd defied 1960s norms to send me to medical school, believing I could be more than a wife. This job was their legacy, not David's, to give away. The divine voice that reborn me wasn't just a gift. It was their love, a cosmic plea to see me thrive. I thought of Auntie June and Uncle Tom Reynolds, my parents' friends who'd treated me like a daughter. June, a former nurse who'd battled sexism, and Tom, a colonel who valued merit, would back me against David. Their support, like the hospital's bustle, anchored me. That evening I walked to Millie's diner, the neon glow a beacon in Millfield's dusk. The jukebox played Cyndi Lauper's "Girls Want to Have Fun," an anthem for my new resolve. I ordered chili fries, savoring the spice David's family shunned. In my past life, I'd cooked bland casseroles to please Mary, hiding my love for bold flavors. Now each bite was a reclaiming of myself. Sarah Thompson slid into the booth, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. "You shook things up today," she said, grinning. I confided in her about my rebirth, the divine voice, and vowed to break free. Sarah, who'd raised her kids alone after her husband left, understood. "You're Millfield's Dr. Emma. Don't let him take that." As I left the diner, the town's lights flickered, symbolizing resilience in Reagan's America. I passed the new mall, its glass doors reflecting the era's consumer boom where Lisa spent her days. Back at the apartment, I saw David's belongings, suits, a watch, all bought with my dowry. In my past life, I'd stayed believing love meant sacrifice. Now, I planned to sell it all, move to my parents' old house, and confront the truth about our marriage. Mary had hidden our certificate, a betrayal I'd uncover. Reborn. I was no longer the fool who loved David Carter. I was Dr. Emma Wilson, and Millfield would see me rise. The autumn sun dipped below Millfield, Ohio's skyline, casting long shadows over the town's weathered brick buildings and shuttered steel mills. It was September 1983, and the air buzzed with the hum of a community fighting to survive Reagan's economic upheaval. Millfield General Hospital, where I, Dr. Emma Wilson, reigned as a physician, was my fortress, its fluorescent lights and antiseptic scent grounding me in my reborn life. The divine voice that had pulled me from death's grip, my parents' love woven into fate's fabric, echoed, "Your strength is your salvation." It was a call to break free from David Carter's betrayal to reclaim the life I'd lost in my past existence. I felt a shift after publicly defying David's demand to give my doctor's position to Lisa Evans. The hospital corridor, alive with patients' whispers and nurses' nods, had crowned me a hero in Millfield's working-class heart. David and Lisa had fled, their facade shattered, but the victory was only the beginning. I returned to our government-issued apartment, a relic of David's army status, its walls lined with furniture I'd bought with my dowry, my father's steel fortune. In my past life, I'd stayed cooking bland pot roasts for David's mother, Mary, while he spent my money on Lisa's whims, a silk scarf, a jukebox's worth of quarters for her nights out. My father's connections had secured David's captaincy, yet he and Mary dismissed my role, crediting his brilliance. Reborn. I saw the truth I'd been a pawn in their game. I decided to reclaim everything. I called a moving company, their truck rumbling up as I directed them to take every item I'd purchased: the oak table, the leather sofa, David's suits, even his prized watch. Each piece reminded me of my past life's sacrifices, such as when I'd stretched his $800 stipend to cover household bills while he bought Lisa gifts. The movers worked swiftly, and by dusk the apartment was nearly bare, the cash from the sales piling up in my hands. I was stunned by the amount, thousands of dollars, a testament to how much I'd poured into David. In 1983, when a gallon of gas cost $1.20 and families scrimped to survive, that money was a fortune, my ticket to freedom. I moved to my parents' old house, a cozy colonial on Maple Street left to me after their deaths. With its creaky floors and faded wallpaper, the house held memories of my mother Ellen tutoring me through chemistry and my father Robert beaming at my medical school graduation. Their legacy wasn't just the money, it was the belief that I, a woman in Reagan's America, could be a doctor, not just a wife. As I unpacked, I visited the Civil Affairs Bureau, intending to file for divorce. The clerk's words stopped me cold. "Ma'am, there's no record of a marriage between you and David Carter." My heart raced. I'd filled out the marriage forms in my past life, but David's mother, Mary, had collected the certificate claiming she'd keep it safe. Now I realized she'd never filed it, likely to secure my wealth without tying David to me legally. The betrayal stung, but it was also a gift. I wasn't bound to David, not legally, not anymore. I confronted Mary at her small ranch house, its lawn cluttered with faded lawn ornaments. She sat at her kitchen table, her face pinched, a cigarette smoldering in an ashtray. "Why didn't you file the marriage certificate?" I demanded. Her eyes darted away, her voice low. "I thought you and David might not last. I wanted to protect him." Protect him? She'd known his heart was with Lisa, had seen my father's health failing, and calculated that my money was all they needed. She'd staged a fake wedding, letting me believe I was David's wife while keeping him free for Lisa. The deception was a knife, but it cut my ties to David cleaner than any divorce. I walked to Millie's Diner, the neon sign glowing against the dusk, its jukebox playing Pat Benatar's "Love is a Battlefield." I ordered chili fries, a spice rebellion against Mary's bland casseroles. Sarah Thompson, my nurse friend, joined me, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. I shared the truth about the fake marriage and my rebirth, the divine voice that had given me this chance. Sarah, who'd raised 2 kids alone after her husband left, understood betrayal. "You're free now, Emma," she said, squeezing my hand. "Live for you." Like the hospital's bustle, her words anchored me in Millfield's resilient spirit, where women fought for their place in a man's world. Auntie June and Uncle Tom Reynolds, my parents' friends, called that night, inviting me to their home. June, a former nurse who'd battled sexism in the 60s, and Tom, a stern but fair Army colonel, had always treated me like a daughter. Over coffee, I poured out my story, the fake marriage, David's betrayal, the divine spark that reborn me. June's eyes welled up, her voice fierce. Your parents would be so proud, Emma. You're stronger than he'll ever know. Tom nodded, his jaw tight. David's my officer, but he's crossed a line. We've got your back. Their support rooted in their own struggles. June's fight for respect. Tom's rise from a mill worker's son bolstered my resolve. I was ready to leave David behind to embrace the life I deserved in this reborn 1983. Millfield, Ohio woke to a crisp September morning in 1983, the town's pulse steady despite the economic scars of shuttered steel mills and Reagan's unfulfilled promises. The streets hummed with the clatter of delivery trucks, and the chatter of locals at the diner where Springsteen's Born in the USA crackled from jukeboxes. I, Dr. Emma Wilson, walked to Millfield General Hospital, my white coat a shield, my heart fortified by the divine voice that had reborn me. Your strength is your salvation. My parents' love, woven into fate's tapestry, had given me this second chance to break free from David Carter's betrayal and reclaim my life. After exposing David and Lisa Evans in the hospital corridor, I'd sold everything I'd bought for our apartment furniture suits, even David's watch, reclaiming my dowry's worth. The cash, a small fortune in a town where a coffee cost 50 cents, was my independence. I'd moved to my parents' old house on Maple Street, and its familiar creaks are comforting. The revelation that our marriage was never registered, Mary's calculated betrayal, had freed me legally, but the emotional weight lingered. In my past life, I'd been a fool, cooking for Mary, stretching David's $800 stipend, while he spent my inheritance on Lisa's whims, a first stole a night at the drive-in. My father's connections had secured David's captaincy, yet he and Mary dismissed my role, crediting his genius. Reborn. I saw the truth. I'd been their bank, not their family. I found solace at Auntie June and Uncle Tom Reynolds' home, a sturdy brick house on the edge of town, its walls lined with photos of their army life. June, a former nurse who'd fought for respect in the 60s, had been my mother's best friend, her laughter echoing Ellen's. Tom, a colonel who'd risen from a mill worker's son, was David's superior, his stern demeanor softened by his love for me. Over coffee, I shared everything, my past life's pain, the fake marriage, the divine spark that reborn me. June's eyes glistened, her voice fierce. Your parents raised a fighter, Emma. David doesn't deserve you. Tom's jaw tightened, his words measured. He's my officer, but he's disgraced himself. We're family, Emma. Whatever you need, we're here. Their support was a lifeline rooted in their own struggles. June had faced leering doctors and dismissive patients, yet she'd risen to head nurse before retiring. Tom, who'd worked the mills before enlisting, knew the value of merit in a town that prized it. Their love for my parents, Robert, who'd mentored Tom, and Ellen, who'd shared June's dreams, made me their daughter in all but name. As we talked, I felt my emotional scars soften the pain of David's betrayal, easing under their warmth. June shared her story of overcoming a bullying supervisor, and her resilience was a mirror to mine. You heal by living true, she said, squeezing my hand. Tom added, You're Millfield's doctor. Don't let him take that. I unpacked boxes at my parents' house, finding my mother's old recipe book, its pages stained with chili splatters, flavors I'd hidden to please Mary. I cooked a pot of it, the spice a rebellion, and invited Sarah Thompson over. My nurse friend Sarah arrived with her kids, and their laughter filled the empty rooms. Over dinner, I shared my rebirth, the divine voice, and Mary's deception. Sarah, who'd rebuilt her life after her husband left, understood. You're rewriting your story, Emma, she said. Don't look back. Like June's, her words were a balm, helping me process the hurt. I wasn't just surviving, I was healing piece by piece in this reborn 1983. The hospital called me back for an evening shift, and I walked through Millfield's streets, the neon glow of bars and diners, a reminder of the town's grit. Patients greeted me with smiles, their trust contrasting with David's scorn. I treated a mill worker's broken arm, his gratitude grounding me. The hospital director, Dr. Hayes, pulled me aside, offering a 2-year training exchange in Boston, a chance to hone my skills at a top hospital. You're one of our best, Emma, he said. The opportunity was a beacon, a path to a future free from David's shadow. As I left the hospital, the jukebox at Millie's Diner played Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time, its lyrics a promise of resilience. I thought of Mary's betrayal and refusal to file our marriage certificate to keep David free for Lisa. The truth hurt, but it also liberated me. I was no longer bound to David, not by law or love. June and Tom's support, Sarah's encouragement, and Millfield's spirit bolstered me. The divine force that reborn me wasn't just a gift. It was a call to honor my parents' legacy, to be the doctor this town needed. David's shadow loomed, but I was ready to step into the light, my resolve unbreakable. Millfield, Ohio shimmered under the bright lights of its new mall in late September 1983, a symbol of Reagan-era consumerism amid the town's Rust Belt decay. The air buzzed with the chatter of shoppers and the clink of coins in arcade machines, while Wham's Wake Me Up Before You Go-Go blared from a nearby radio. I, Dr. Emma Wilson, walked through the mall's polished corridors, my white coat swapped for a denim jacket, my heart fortified by the divine voice reborn in me. Your strength is your salvation. My parents' love, woven into fate's tapestry, had given me this second chance to break free from David Carter's betrayal and reclaim my life as Millfield's doctor. I'd sold everything I'd bought for David's apartment furniture, suits, his watch, reclaiming my dowry's worth, and moving to my parents' old house on Maple Street. The cash a fortune in a town where a burger cost $1 was my independence. I'd learned our marriage was never registered a deception by David's mother, Mary, who'd withheld the certificate to keep my wealth accessible while leaving David free for Lisa Evans. The betrayal had stung, but it liberated me. I was no longer David's wife, not legally, not emotionally. At the hospital, I'd publicly defied David's demand to give my doctor's position to Lisa, exposing her incompetence and their affair. Millfield's working-class spirit had rallied behind me, and I felt the town's pulse resilient, like me beating strong. I eyed a gold watch in the mall's jewelry store, a treat for myself after years of sacrificing for David. The clerk, a young woman with teased hair, smiled as I paid. The weight of my own money was a reminder of my newfound freedom. Then I saw David and Lisa, arm in arm, her delicate frame leaning into his army uniform. Lisa dangled a cheap silver watch, giggling, her voice a practiced lilt. In my past life, David had spent my inheritance on her whims, dresses, dinner dates, while I scrimped to keep our household afloat. My father's connections had secured his captaincy, yet he and Mary dismissed my role, crediting his charisma. Reborn, I saw their game. Lisa's fragility fed David's ego, and he played her hero at my expense. Lisa spotted me, her eyes narrowing, and shoved the watch into David's hands, ducking behind him like a startled deer. Her act was transparent, but David fell for it, his gaze following hers to me. Emma, he called, striding over, give that watch you bought to Lisa. His tone was commanding, as if my money still belonged to him. I clutched the box, my voice cold. Why should I? He stepped closer, his face flushed. You humiliated her at the hospital, making up lies about her husband. She fainted after. You owe her. I'd have caved in my past life, terrified of his anger, but the divine spark that had been reborn in me burned bright. Did I lie? I shot back, raising my voice. Lisa's husband drowned drunk, not a hero. If you want her to have a watch, use your money, not mine. Shoppers turned, their murmurs growing. Millfield, a town of mill workers and diner waitresses, valued truth over pretense. David's jaw tightened, his authority crumbling. We're husband and wife, he hissed. What's yours is mine. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Husband. Ask your mother about that, and while you're at it, why not return every penny my family gave you? His face darkened, the truth hitting hard. My father's wealth had built his career, and I'd exposed his dependence. Lisa's tears started, but the crowd wasn't swayed, their whispers turning to pointed stares. A store clerk, overhearing, muttered, some officer mooching off his wife. David grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. You're making a scene again. Just give her the watch and I'll come home tonight. His offer was a ploy, oblivious to my move-out. I yanked free, my voice ringing. Having trouble with money, David, stealing my watch to please your sweetheart. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, shoppers shaking their heads. In 1983, when women like me fought for respect in a man's world, my defiance struck a chord. David threatened divorce, unaware I knew we weren't married. Fine, I said, smiling coldly. Let's do it. But you'll return my family's money first. He froze, his bluff called, and Lisa's sobs faded as they retreated, the mall's bright lights exposing their shame. I walked out, the watch box in my hand, the autumn air cool against my skin. I sat with Sarah Thompson, my nurse friend, at my parents' house over coffee. I shared the mall confrontation, my rebirth, and Mary's deception. Sarah, who'd rebuilt her life after her husband left, nodded. You're taking back your power, Emma. Her support, like that of Auntie June and Uncle Tom Reynolds, my parents' friends, was a balm. June, a former nurse, and Tom David's colonel, had promised to back me. The divine voice echoed, urging me to honor my parents' legacy, my mother's tutoring, my father's pride. I was Dr. Emma Wilson, and Millfield's spirit forged in steel and sweat lifted me as I prepared for a Boston training exchange, a new chapter free from David's shadow. The streets of Millfield, Ohio glowed under neon signs as September 1983 faded into dusk, the town's diners and bars alive with the clatter of plates and Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time on jukeboxes. I, Dr. Emma Wilson, stood in my parents' old house on Maple Street, its creaky floors a comfort after selling everything I'd bought for David Carter's apartment. The cash from those sales my dowry reclaimed was my independence, a fortune, in a town where a movie ticket cost $3. Reborn by a divine force, my parents' love woven into fate, I carried the voice that had saved me. Your strength is your salvation. It was a call to heal, to break free from David's betrayal and Mary's deception, who'd never filed our marriage certificate to keep my wealth accessible. The hospital was my sanctuary where I thrived as Millfield's doctor, but David's shadow lingered. After our mall confrontation where I'd exposed his reliance on my family's money, he'd retreated humiliated. I'd learned our marriage was a sham, Mary's calculated move to secure my dowry while leaving David free for Lisa Evans. In my past life, I'd been a fool cooking bland meals for Mary, stretching David's $800 stipend while he spent my inheritance on Lisa's whims perfume diner dates. My father's connections had built his career, yet he dismissed my role. Reborn. I was done sacrificing. That night I cooked chili, the spice a rebellion against Mary's tasteless casseroles, and sat to eat the house's quiet, a balm. A knock shattered the peace. Before I could react, David burst in, his army uniform disheveled, his eyes wild. "Emma, you sold everything!" he shouted, his voice a tidal wave. "You reported me for misconduct, ruining my career. What did you do to Lisa?" His demotion, sparked by my hospital stand, had stripped his captaincy. He'd gone to the empty apartment, realizing I'd reclaimed my life. I stood firm, blocking his path. I sold what I bought. I said, my voice steady. "You mess with Lisa. Everyone sees it." His face twisted, rage overtaking reason. "Your family never respected me," he growled. "You married me, so everything's mine. Lisa's innocent. You're the problem." He lunged, grabbing my arm, tearing at my sweater. Panic surged, memories of my past life's pain flooding back his neglect. Lisa's smirks. I struggled, but his grip was iron. "You're my wife," he snarled, yanking harder, leaving me in a thin blouse. Terror gripped me, but the divine spark that had been reborn in me burned bright. I grabbed a ceramic vase from the table, smashing it over his head. He staggered, dazed, but his eyes gleamed with madness. Advancing again, a voice cut through the chaos. "What are you doing, Uncle Tom Reynolds?" David's colonel stood in the doorway, his face thunderous. Auntie June was behind him, her eyes wide with horror. They'd come to check on me, their bond with my parents, Robert's mentorship, Ellen's friendship making me family. David stammered. She was my wife, but Tom's glare silenced him. "Get out," Tom ordered, his voice steel. David, his pride shattered, slunk away, his uniform a mockery of honor. I collapsed into June's arms, tears streaming, my body shaking. The assault had reopened old wounds, the fear raw and consuming. June led me to the bathroom where I scrubbed my skin until it burned, trying to erase David's touch. Nausea rose, memories of his betrayal, spending my money on Lisa, ignoring my dying pleas churning in my mind. June stayed, her voice soft. I faced a doctor who grabbed me once, she said, sharing her own trauma from her nursing days. "I survived by reclaiming my strength. You will too." Her story, rooted in her fight against 1960s sexism, was a lifeline. We talked through the night, her warmth easing my pain. I dug my nails into my palms, the physical sting grounding me a step toward healing. The next morning, Sarah Thompson arrived with breakfast, and her nurse's scrubs were a familiar comfort. "David's been disciplined," she said. "His career's over." The news was a relief, but fear lingered. I contacted a locksmith to install a security door, a barrier against David's chaos. Sarah shared her own story of leaving an abusive ex, her resilience mirroring June's. "You're not alone, Emma," she said. Their support, like Millfield's spirit, lifted me. The hospital director offered me a 2-year Boston training exchange and a chance to grow as a doctor. The divine voice echoed, urging me to honor my parents' legacy, my mother's tutoring, my father's pride. David's assault had shaken me, but June and Sarah's stories and Millfield's grit were healing me step by step in this reborn 1983. The crisp autumn wind swept through Millfield, Ohio in late September 1983, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant bonfires. The town, resilient amid Reagan's economic promises and factory layoffs, pulsed with the quiet determination of its people. Mill workers grabbing coffee at diners, nurses like me hurrying to shifts at Millfield General Hospital. I, Dr. Emma Wilson, stood in my parents' old house on Maple Street, the security door a new barrier against David Carter's chaos. Reborn by a divine force my parents' love woven into fate's tapestry, I carried the voice that had saved me. Your strength is your salvation. It was a call to justice, to heal from David's assault and Mary's deception, and to depart for a brighter future. David's attack had shaken me, his hands tearing at my clothes, his rage reopening wounds from my past life, his neglect. Lisa Evans smirked the way he'd spent my inheritance on her whims while I scrimped. My father's connections had built his career, yet he dismissed my role. But Uncle Tom Reynolds, David's colonel, had intervened, his stern presence sending David fleeing. The next morning, Tom called. David's been discharged, Emma. His assault and misconduct ended his army days. The news was a relief, justice served in a town that valued honor. Tom, who'd risen from a mill worker's son, had pushed for the discipline, his bond with my father Robert's mentorship driving him to protect me. Auntie June, a former nurse, had stayed with me, her stories of overcoming sexism in the 60s, helping me process the trauma. You're healing by standing tall, she said, her warmth a balm. Sarah Thompson, my nurse friend, visited with breakfast, and her kids' laughter filled the house. David's ruined, she confirmed, Millfield's talking, his demotions the talk of the diner. Sarah, who'd rebuilt her life after her husband left, shared her healing journey. It takes time, but you're stronger for it. Her words, like June's, were steps toward mending my spirit. I scrubbed less frantically now, the nausea fading as I embraced my support network. The hospital director had offered a 2-year training exchange in Boston, a chance to specialize at a top facility. You're ready for this, Sarah encouraged. Millfield's spirit, forged in steel and sweat, lifted me as I prepared to leave, my white coat packed alongside my resolve. That afternoon, Lisa Evans blocked my path outside the hospital, her delicate features twisted in panic. Where's David? She demanded, her voice shrill. He hasn't come home since seeing you. In my past life, Lisa's fragility had manipulated David, her tears winning his heart while I suffered. Reborn, I saw her games. I don't know, I said coldly, stepping past. She grabbed my arm, desperate. You did this. You tore us apart. You and David weren't even married, Mary told me. He'd never have chosen you if I hadn't been married. Her words confirmed Mary's deception, the withheld certificate a ploy to access my wealth. I yanked free, my voice icy. Whatever you say, Lisa, but I know your tricks, your husband's death, your feigned weakness. Push me and I'll expose it all. See if David still plays hero then. Lisa stomped in frustration but backed off, clinging to David as her lifeline. Unbeknownst to her, he was no longer the captain she adored. His career was ashes. Millfield's gossip would bury her soon enough. I walked away, the autumn sun warming my face, my steps lighter. The divine spark that reborn me urged me forward, honoring my parents' legacy, my mother's tutoring, my father's pride at my graduation. They'd defied norms to make me a doctor, and now I'd thrive. Meanwhile, David, released from detention, stumbled through Millfield streets, his uniform filthy, a wound on his head oozing from poor treatment. Feverish and weak, he collapsed near a diner, darkness closing in. In his haze, a dream unfolded, vivid like a memory from my past life. He saw me lifeless on the operating table, our unborn child gone, while he celebrated Lisa's birthday. Commander Tom dragged him to the hospital, where public outrage led to his imprisonment. Released, he overheard Lisa plotting to flee with my sold dowry, calling him a fool for choosing her over me. The dream blurred with reality, and David questioned its truth. My changed attitude, my defiance, it all fit. He awoke in a hospital bed, bandaged, but the doubt lingered. Warned by superiors to stay away from me, he turned to Lisa, believing her gentle nature would save him. Cleaned up, he visited her, hiding his downfall. She beamed. David, where were you? I worried. He proposed marriage on a whim, and she agreed eagerly. At the registry office, they signed the papers, but when he revealed his ruin, no rank, no money, her face twisted. Divorce me now, she screamed, sobbing. Only then did David realize the dream was prophetic, but instead of self-reflection, he blamed Lisa, dragging her home, insisting they were wed. Their happy life began a prelude to chaos. I boarded the train to Boston the next day, Millfield's skyline fading, my heart full of promise. The divine voice whispered, guiding me to a future as Dr. Emma Wilson, healer and survivor. 2 years passed like a whirlwind, and in September 1985 I stepped off the train back in Millfield, Ohio, the town transformed yet familiar. Reagan's economy had trickled down unevenly, with new strip malls dotting the landscape amid lingering mill scars. Dr. Emma Wilson returned as a specialist, and my Boston training sharpened my skills at a top hospital. The divine force that had reborn me, my parents' love woven into fate, had guided my journey, the voice echoing, "Your strength is your salvation." I'd healed from David Carter's assault, Auntie June's stories, and Sarah Thompson's support mending my spirit. No longer scrubbing my skin raw, I embraced my scars as badges of resilience. My close friend Sarah picked me up at the station. Her kids were now taller, and her smile was wide. "Millfield missed you, Emma," she said, hugging me. Over coffee at Millie's diner, Madonna's Like a Prayer played on the jukebox. She filled me in on David and Lisa. I'd assumed their union would be blissful, David's first love finally his. But reality was grim. After marrying, they'd crammed into Mary's small house, losing David's government apartment. Mary, bitter over the fake marriage revelation, exploited Lisa, forcing her to cook and clean while David, unemployed and angry, vented his frustrations on her. Their home was a cauldron of screams, the once delicate Lisa battered by their abuse. Haunted by his prophetic dream, David blamed Lisa for his downfall, ignoring his betrayals, spending my inheritance on her whims, dismissing my role in his success. Mary joined in her deception, exposed, but unrepentant, teaming with David to beat Lisa during arguments. Lisa's mental state crumbled under the torment, her fragility no longer an act but a shattered reality. One night during a tense dinner, she slipped rat poison into the food, intending to end them all. The attempt failed, but the chaos landed them in court, their happy life a public scandal. Millfield's gossip mills churned the town's working-class spirit, scorning their downfall. None of it touched me. I walked Millfield's streets, greeting patients who'd missed their doctor. Dr. Hayes welcomed me back. At the hospital, my Boston expertise was a boon to the community. I treated a young mill worker's injury, and his gratitude reminded me of my purpose. Sarah shared her updates. Her kids are thriving, and she has been promoted to head nurse. "You inspired me, Emma," she said. Auntie June and Uncle Tom visited, June's eyes proud. "Your parents would beam," she said, hugging me. Tom, retired, now nodded. "You're the doctor Millfield needs." Their support rooted in their struggles. June's fight against sexism, Tom's rise from poverty mirrored my triumph. I visited my parents' graves, the autumn leaves swirling. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling their love in the divine spark that had reborn me. In 1985, America, where women shattered glass ceilings, I stood tall, free from David's shadow. My past life's pain, his neglect, Lisa's manipulations, Mary's betrayal had forged me. The fake marriage, once a wound, was now a gift, severing ties cleanly. I'd healed through community, June's wisdom, Sarah's friendship, Millfield's grit. No more nausea or fear. I was whole, a trusted doctor, mastering medicine, bettering myself daily. David and Lisa's tragedy was distant noise. Their poisoned life, full of abuse and regret, was karma's hand. David, perhaps still haunted by his dream, rotted in his choices, while Lisa, broken, faced the consequences of her games. Mary, complicit, shared their misery. Millfield moved on, as did I. My white coat symbolized triumph. The divine voice faded, its work done, leaving me to live fully, Dr. Emma Wilson, reborn and redeemed.